जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा.
Disclaimer from Zalangam Media. This analysis is prepared strictly for informational and research purposes. Zalangam Media does not take any political position or endorse any group mentioned herein. The content has been developed from publicly available reports, government statements, and established news agencies. All references are attributed to their original publishers to ensure transparency and to protect Zalangam Media from any liability or penalty. Readers are encouraged to cross-verify from primary sources for accuracy. The press statement issued by the Village Volunteers Coordinating Committee (VVCC) on 4 September 2025 offers a rare glimpse into the deep fractures within the Kuki movement in Manipur. The VVCC condemned the decision of the Ministry of Home Affairs, communicated through a Press Information Bureau release, which claimed that the Kuki Council had agreed to open National Highway 2 for the free movement of commuters and goods in exchange for an extension of the Suspension of Operations Agreement. For the volunteers, this decision was not only a unilateral step, but one that disregarded the sacrifices, anxieties, and security concerns of the Kuki population that has borne the brunt of violence since 3 May 2023. To understand the significance of this statement, one must situate it within the broader history of the Manipur conflict of 2023-2025. The violence began after a rally by Kuki groups against the Meitei demand for scheduled tribe status, which quickly spiraled into armed clashes across the Imphal Valley and adjoining hill districts. By mid-September 2023, according to official figures cited in Wikipedia and news reporting, at least 175 people had lost their lives, over 1,000 were injured, and more than 60,000 were displaced from their homes. The violence had a distinct pattern. Meiteis remained in the valley with full backing of state forces, while Kukis were pushed into the hills where they were largely left to defend themselves. This asymmetry of protection created an environment in which local defense formations emerged, one of the most prominent being the Village Volunteers. Reports from outlets such as New Lines magazine and The Guardian in 2024 described these groups as civilian defense militias, improvised yet organized, tasked with guarding vulnerable villages against attacks. The VVCC, therefore, sees itself as the true guardian of Kuki interests, born out of necessity rather than formal negotiation. Their statement condemns the Kuki Council, which they accuse of entering into an agreement that could compromise security by allowing Meitei movement into Kuki territories without adequate guarantees. The volunteers argue that no free movement should be permitted until there is a formal and separate administrative arrangement recognizing the Kuki people's rights. In their eyes, any premature opening of routes only exposes communities to fresh risks of violence, looting, or reprisal. The Suspension of Operations Pact itself has a long history. Signed first in 2008, it represented a ceasefire-like arrangement between the Government of India, the Manipur state government, and two umbrella bodies of Kuki insurgent groups, namely the Kuki National Organization and the United People's Front. Under the agreement, militants were supposed to stay in designated camps, deposit their weapons in double-lock custody, and refrain from violence, while the government suspended its operations against them. The pact was renewed periodically but often under strain. By February 2024, after allegations that cadres had been involved in ethnic clashes, the state government even refused to extend it, though the central government maintained negotiations. Hindustan Times, the New Indian Express, and The Print have all reported on the fluctuating fortunes of the SOO framework in these years. When in September 2025, the Ministry of Home Affairs announced the renewal of the pact for 1 year, along with the commitment of the Kuki Council to open National Highway 2, it was framed as a confidence-building measure. PIB notes highlighted that camps would be reduced, cadres would undergo physical verification and weapons would be secured more strictly. The print and local outlets such as Pothashang reported that the decision came just ahead of a likely visit by the Prime Minister, signaling that New Delhi sought to showcase progress and stability in Manipur before a high-profile political event. For the Meitei community, which has been largely restricted to the valley, the opening of National Highway 2 is a critical step. The road is a lifeline connecting Imphal to Nagaland and Assam, and disruptions to it have created both economic hardship and symbolic isolation. Local media sympathetic to Meitei interests welcomed the news as a move towards normalization, seeing it as an assertion that territorial integrity of Manipur remains intact. But from the Kuki-Zo grassroots perspective, represented by the VVCC, the deal looks very different. Their press statement argues that the decision was taken without consultation with the affected communities, who remain the ones at physical risk. They emphasize that So signatories are not mandated representatives of the Kuki-Zo people, that their decision has no bearing on collective will, and that in fact the Kuki-Zo Council's role is illegitimate if it acts without broader consensus. The VVCC went further by announcing a complete boycott of the Kuki-Zo Council, effectively deepening divisions within Kuki representation. This raises the question of legitimacy in conflict resolution. Who has the right to negotiate peace and on whose behalf? The Suo groups have a military past, and the Kuki-Zo Council emerged as a civil umbrella body in 2024, but neither may enjoy full democratic mandate. By contrast, the village volunteers, though informal and outside state law, derive their credibility from the fact that they physically protect villages in times of crisis. Their authority is rooted in immediate defense rather than formal recognition. Security concerns are central to their rejection of the highway opening. The volunteers recall incidents where central forces allegedly sided with valley-based armed groups, as suggested by an Assam Rifles report cited by Al Jazeera in 2024, which claimed that mutilated bodies of 2 volunteers bore marks of torture. In such an atmosphere of mistrust, asking the Kukis to open their territories for free passage of Meiteis appears to them a betrayal of sacrifices made since May 2023. Politically, the VVCC statement shows how fragmented the Kuki camp has become. On one hand, the Kuki-Zo Council and Sioux groups are engaging in negotiations, likely seeing in them a path towards some form of normalization or recognition. On the other hand, grassroots actors reject any step that undermines their demand for a separate administrative arrangement. This division could weaken the Kuki bargaining position overall and allow the state or the valley majority to exploit the fissures. It also complicates the peace process, as there is no single entity that can claim to speak for the entire Kuki-Zo population. The implications of the VVCC boycott are serious. If the volunteers refuse to cooperate with highway reopening, they could physically prevent it through roadblocks or community mobilization. This could trigger confrontation with state forces or even with So cadres attempting to enforce the agreement. Renewed clashes are a real risk. Additionally, mistrust of the Kuki-Zo Council may drive further fragmentation, with local groups pursuing their own defensive or political strategies. Beyond immediate security, the larger question concerns the political future of Manipur. Kukis have repeatedly demanded a separate administrative arrangement, often framed as a demand for union territory status or an equivalent structure. Until such a solution is negotiated, they remain skeptical of any arrangement that emphasizes territorial integrity of Manipur under the existing government, which they view as biased toward Meitei interests. Thus, the VVCC stance reflects a deeper aspiration for political recognition that goes beyond roads or commodity flow. The conflict has also deeply disrupted everyday life, sports, and culture. Reuters reported in May 2024 that the state's premier women's football club, Eastern Sporting Union, was devastated by the ethnic divide, with players displaced across camps and unable to compete. The symbolic disintegration of sports teams highlights how the conflict has fractured even apolitical spaces. Similarly, festivals like the Shirui Lily Festival have been conducted under heavy security, with rumors of threats circulating widely. The Times of India and Economic Times reported in April 2024 that Manipur police even had to deny the existence of certain volunteer groups in the eastern zone, underscoring the fog of misinformation that has become routine in this environment.
Sangol, situated on the fringe areas between Kangpokpi and Imphal West districts. Videos of the incident shows a barrage of gunshots and mortar shells being fired on the village areas of the Kuki community. The gunfight continued till late on Tuesday evening. Although there is no official confirmation, sources indicate that at least 2 armed militants were killed during the.
All of this paints a picture of a conflict that is not only military or political, but profoundly social. Trust is in short supply, and any unilateral decision by the state or central government risks backfiring. The VVCC statement is significant because it articulates, in clear language, the feelings of exclusion and betrayal experienced by many Kukis. It is not merely a rejection of one highway decision, it is a rejection of a broader peace process that they feel is top-down, rushed, and inattentive to ground realities. At the same time, it is important to note that the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Kuki Council are under pressure to demonstrate progress. With a prime ministerial visit expected, symbolism matters. Opening National Highway 2 and extending the Suo offer visible signs of peace, even if the underlying tensions remain unresolved. The gap between these optics and grassroots realities is precisely where mistrust deepens. The future trajectory will depend on whether inclusive dialogue can be fostered. Without involving grassroots stakeholders like the VVCC, peace processes may produce only fragile agreements. Conversely, if volunteer groups harden their stance and resist central authority, the prospect of a long-term settlement may recede even further. In conclusion, the VVCC press statement should be read not as a rejection of peace itself, but as a warning that peace cannot be imposed. It highlights the urgent need for broader, inclusive consultation, recognition of grassroots sacrifices, and genuine engagement with the demand for administrative autonomy. Unless these issues are addressed, deals such as the Suo extension and highway reopening may only deepen divisions rather than resolve them. Source consulted. Press Information Bureau, Government of India, release on the renewal of Suo and opening of National Highway 2. NDTV coverage on Kuki, decision to open the highway in exchange for Suo extension. The print analysis of the MHA Kuki Zo Council deal ahead of the Prime Minister's visit. Pothashang local reporting on the agreement and its reception. Wikipedia entries on the 2023-2025 Manipur violence and Kuki Council background. New Lines magazine feature on the blurring lines between civilians and combatants in Manipur. The Guardian report on vigilante militias and unregulated civilian defense. Al Jazeera coverage citing an Assam Rifles report on violence against volunteers. Hindustan Times reporting on the history of the Suo agreement. The New Indian Express articles on Suo negotiations in 2025. Reuters report on the disruption of sports and ethnic divisions in Manipur. Times of India and Economic Times reporting on security arrangements at cultural festivals and police statements on volunteer groups.